You're very welcome to The Ticket. Our listeners will be very familiar with your voice, as this, I think, is your third appearance on our show over the last years.
I'm a repeat offender.
Repeat offender, I like that. Very good. But a repeat offender, that adds a lot of value. So
Can't get enough. There you go.
We always appreciate your insights. Before we get into your annual research, which is one of the key focus areas that we want to talk about today, you've observed some really monumental changes in customer service over the past 3 decades. Could you highlight a couple of pivotal shifts that have fundamentally changed how businesses approach customer experience today?
Well, several things come to mind right off the top of my head. And by the way, if you ask me this question next week, I could give you a little bit different answer. If you look at my annual article I do on trends and predictions, I always open with the same one because it continues to be true. It's a trend, and it's the trend that keeps increasing or improving, and that is that our customers are expecting more from us. They're smarter when it comes to customer service and experience than they've ever been. The reason is companies have been promising, and by the way, I remember back in the 1980s, back when you and I were just little kids, right? I was watching TV commercials about the award-winning companies, and they would say, yeah, we are award-winning when it comes to customer service. And I thought, what does that mean? And there was an award over here in the U.S., the Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award, and it was the award that companies like the Ritz-Carlton strive to get and win. And so I started to do case studies on all of these. And what happens over time is that customers get educated by great companies on what service looks like. And they start to expect that level of service from anybody they do business with. And it doesn't matter if you're B2B or B2C or even government. Everybody you interact with is a consumer at some level, and they will, whether they consciously do it or not, compare the experience they're having with you to some other experience that they've had, probably with a great company that it could be a huge company, or it could be maybe the local dry cleaner down the street or the shoe repair store that always knows the name of the customer, and when they walk in, that always says your shoes will be ready on Friday and they get a call on Thursday, hence under-promising and over-delivering. And customers walk away going, why can't every experience with every company be as good as that one? And so that's why I think that's important. A big fundamental change that's happened, you asked me for things that have changed. I promise not to go so long-winded on this. We see technology improving. And just in the last year and a half, 2 years, the idea of bringing AI with generative AI into the support world that we live in. But know that that's actually been going on for well over a decade. I attended meetings with IBM when they were rolling out their Watson program, and they put me through some really cool educational experiences, one of them called cognitive college. I just love that term. And I learned what the beginning of the idea of digital customer support looks like. So we're moving away from just using the phone to using all kinds of different ways to communicate digitally, whether it be as simple as a frequently asked question on a website to something that's more intuitive where you can ask questions, not just look up questions, but you can ask questions, hence the generative AI. There's just so much more that can be done. And really, at the end of it all, I think it's great for the customer. Number two, I think companies are trying to compete to create a better service experience, which once again is great for the customer. It's also great for the company because we learn service doesn't cost, it pays. And finally, I just want to say that when it comes to the contact center world, boy, has a lot changed in the way we do business and the way they, meaning the employees that we have, work. But I think the employee experience is becoming ever more important to drive a better customer experience. So we need to make sure we provide our employees the same type of experience. Not I'm going to say the same type. We need to make them just as happy as we want our customers to be. Otherwise, you're going to have a disconnect. So those are just a few of my thoughts. And I think that wraps up our time on the interview. Thank you very much. No, just kidding.
No, I love those perspectives, and particularly the last one around where we're moving with generative AI. I think I shared before with you. I have a frustration that technology hasn't been applied as pervasively to the customer service, customer experience world. Organizations are very slow to look at the possibility of AI ML, which has been around for a long time, but it's obviously taking on a whole new opportunity now with generative AI. And it's great to see that, customer support, customer service organizations are beginning now to really embrace the opportunity that it offers and really being focused. And I think the three dimensions you hit are spot on. It's changing the customer experience, changing the agent experience, and changing the business experience, that you can actually operate and deliver customer service in a totally different way that's adding far more value back to your business. Now, every year, as you mentioned already, you release the Achieving Customer Amazement Study and its report on customer preferences and habits. And according to this year's report, a staggering 88% of customers now believe that customer service is more important than ever. What do you think has really kind of driven this shift in customer priorities and this kind of almost maniacal focus on customer service?
Well, I've already mentioned the one, in that our customers are smarter as a result of companies training them, the retailers, even in B2B, the companies train them on what great service looks like. So they expect that from everyone. But I also think they want value for the money that they pay. And they're learning that value comes beyond just the product. It comes from the experience. It was predicted probably I'm going to say almost 15 years ago, that experience, when it came into the 2020s, which we're in the middle of now, that experience would be even more important than product. And think about this. We can buy pretty much anything from multiple sources. Now, that changes in the B2B world. There's probably less options. But if I walk into a mall and I don't like the way I'm being treated, I go to a store 2 or 3 stores down the hall and probably buy the same product. But here's the point. Products are commodities. And once in a while you find something where, well, this is the only company that sells this. Well, that's unique. But really, as a commodity, what can we do to differentiate ourselves? There's only one thing we can do, and that's create an experience that gets people to say, the next time I want whatever it is that they sell, knowing I can get it at other places, I'm going to come back to this place. And the only way to make that happen is to create the experience that makes people want to do that. And by the way, you want people loyal to your experience, not your price. There's plenty of retailers out there, and we'll use retail as an example, where the lowest price wins. And if your customers are coming to you because you offer a lower price, realize that you are in a very vulnerable position, that if somebody offers a lower price, that is the only thing they're loyal to, is price. However, when you create that emotional connection that ties to the experience that creates loyalty, customers will say, I'm not going to take a chance on doing business elsewhere. Why would I? This is what I enjoy doing, so I'm not going to give that up. And that's one of the reasons why when you look at price is, product's the same, price is different. Product's the same, experience is different, but why would I even though somebody promises me a great experience, the only reason I'm going to go there is because the experience that I currently have isn't what I want it to be. So if it is what I want it to be, I'm sticking around.
I love that around, as you say, products very much commoditized, but it's the customer experience that is the real differentiator. And the differentiator in a world where the bar is rising all the time, as you say, customer expectations are increasing. If they expect more and better quality all the time.
And to that point, on page 8, we talk about the importance of customer service and how CX continues to increase. So I've been doing this since, in the 2010s. And this is what's amazing. For the most part, I just have the last 4 years worth of stats. But let's talk about like a convenient experience. 4 years ago, and I could have gone back further, 84% of customers felt convenience was important. And by convenience, I'm talking about that friction-free experience, how easy we are to do business with. Well, today, that number is 94%. Knowledgeable employees were important. 85% of the people we surveyed. By the way, this is a U.S. survey based on the U.S. Census, so the general population of 18 to 60, I think it's 68-year-olds. So 85% is increased to 93%. Employees that are helpful and knowledgeable. Well, isn't that what we always want? Well, 85% of the people we interviewed a number of years ago said, yeah, that was important. Today, it's 91% in virtually every area. Here's a good one. Able to reach the right customer support person. Well, back then it was 85%. Today it's 93%. So you can see it just continues to increase. Why? Because we're educating, the world is educating, the business world, our customers on what you could have. And when they experience, the customer says, I like that. I want more of it. I don't care who I do business with whatever I'm buying. They better give me that great experience, or else I'll find another place that does.
Absolutely. Customers of choice. That's one thing we really need to remember. Now, I want to move on because you actually mentioned AI as one of the kind of monumental shifts. And 62% of customers in your kind of study are expecting AI technologies to become the primary mode of customer service in the future. How do you envisage AI transforming customer support in the next 5 years?
Well, let's take a look at a case study that's not AI, but it's transferring the mindset of a customer from a totally analog experience to a digital experience. Again, not AI, and that is the airline industry. It was a long time ago, remember, there was a time that the only way to book an airline ticket was to pick up the phone and make a phone call, right? And then I think it was either Alaska or Delta. But I actually wrote about this in the Convenience Revolution. But one of these major airlines said, we have a new way of doing it. If you would go online to our website and book your ticket online, you'll see it's not as hard as you think it is. It's actually pretty easy. And by the way, we'll give you an incentive. We'll give you miles in your account if you book online. And all of a sudden people said, wow, this works. It's easy. It's actually pretty quick. And you may remember the airline started to say, rather than come to the airport and stand in line to get your boarding pass, especially if you're carrying luggage on, why don't you do it ahead of time? Check in. And you used to have to print your boarding pass. Today, it's on your phone. It's an app. But what they did over time is they created this digital experience. And they trained and gave incentive to the customer to use the technology by giving them extra points. Well, eventually, critical mass took over. There was a tipping point, and pretty much everybody now uses online reservations. And now let me ask you, Declan, when is the last time you took a trip that you called the airline to book your ticket? I mean, international trips, sometimes it's a little bit more complicated. But if you're just going, somewhere even in Europe on the other side of the pond where you live over there, when's the last time you picked up the phone and called the reservation?
For a standard reservation, it's probably a decade or more before
Yeah, that's the point. Yeah.
However, and this is kind of the opportunity, I did have a complex situation not that long ago where I was forced to call the airline to make what I thought was a reasonably simple change, but they deemed it a complex change. So I still think there's an opportunity for improvement, despite the fact that,
no doubt,
the airline industry has gone primarily digital. There are edge cases they can't deal with.
I won't tell you the name of the airline, but there's an airline out there whose slogan is, we're not happy till you're not happy. But seriously, sometimes, and it's really, it confuses me. Why should this be so difficult? We always, does that make sense? Well, apparently, whether it's the airlines or any other industry, there are systems in place to make things work smoothly, and we don't know how complicated those systems are. I've been writing a lot of articles lately. I just wrote my third one about one of the things that we need to always be thinking about is how can we simplify the complicated? And when we think of, okay, shouldn't it be easy? Just go online, do this, make this change. Well, it may appear to be easy, but to make it really work behind the scenes is often pretty complicated. So as simple as we want the concept to be, technology needs to catch up to it.
Absolutely. And some of these airlines are running on very old legacy technology. So, there's definitely a modernization opportunity for lots of businesses out there. I want to go on again on the AI question because, despite the potential benefits, like 63% of customers express frustration with AI and self-service options. Like, what strategies would you recommend to companies looking to integrate AI without alienating their customer base?
Well, the first and foremost thing is to test and test and test some more. If you're going to create a solution that appears to be good, and I'm going to go to the CX leaders on this one, and I'll go beyond CX leaders. I want the CEO and anybody in the C-suite. I want director levels. I want vice presidents to all call and experience what the customer experiences. That'll be your first clue to either you've got it or you don't. And so I think that too many times we don't mystery shop our own companies enough. And there is a huge disconnect, and it's not a study that I've done, but when you take a look at what customers perceive a company's experience to be versus an executive that perceives the same experience to be for their own company, there's a pretty big gap that, there's a misconception, whatever you want to call it, that most people appear to think they're better than they actually are. So mystery shop, create the systems, and recognize the system is being built by people for people to use. So even though we're calling it digital, we're doing as much as we can to emulate a human type experience. We're just doing it digitally. So if somebody has a question, why, should they have to, jump hoops just to get a simple question answered? So if I call, I'll give you an example of this. I won't tell you the name of the company, but it was a cable TV broadband type company. And all I wanted to know is, because I was in a different city, if it was the same cable network, I wanted to know what channel did this sporting event, I couldn't find it. Was it where the sporting event would be? And all they wanted me to do before they would give me the simple answer of its channel, whatever it is, well, do you have an account with us? No, I'm at somebody's house, but I do have an account with you in another city, but that's not what's important. I'm at somebody's house, same company. I just need to know what channel. Well, can I get your account number? No, I don't have it. Oh, well, I need to look you up. Why? All I want is to know what the channel is. And do you see what's happening here? It's just so darn difficult. And it shouldn't be that way. Well, when you go online, that's the kind of question that you can simply go into a search bar and type in, what channel is here's my St. Louis Blues logo of my favorite hockey team. What channel is the hockey game on tonight for the St. Louis Blues versus whomever? It's an easy one. I don't need to log in, give my account information, tell you my firstborn child's name, my mother's maiden name, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the digital experience, boy, check it out. Make sure it's easy. Ask questions. Is it intuitive? Test, and test some more and find out if it's working. And then once it is, release it. And I want to add one other thing. Realize that if you're going to create a great experience for your customer, that it doesn't cause a lot of burden on your employees as well. We may create a system that's great for the customer, but it causes employees to take an extra 2 or 3 steps if they are contacted as a result of something, customer has a question or a need that they couldn't get digitally. So we want to be very aware of that employee experience as well as the customer experience.
I love that about looking at the kind of end-to-end journey, including what happens when you get a handover from AI and automation to human support. Like in our own organization, we've hired in what we call a conversation designer, and they really look at that conversation and we make sure we walk the path that the customer walks, and understand all those handoffs, making sure we're taking out as much friction as possible out of the process. So yeah, I love that advice. It really resonates. I want to switch to a really interesting concept. So you did a special report on the dangerous customer.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. I thought, I always do a report on like the crazy things, like how many customers yell at you, cuss at you, et cetera, et cetera. But no, this is a really important question. And I think I finally nailed the question that gave me the answer that I think is realistic. I've been trying to get the right answer for several years. Basically, you're asking about the dangerous customer is the satisfied customer, right? So satisfactory, you will ultimately lose if you understand that if all a customer is satisfied, that's an average rating. On a scale of, so here was the question. Let me go back into history. Probably about 15 years ago, maybe even a little bit longer, I read a stat from 2 professors out of Vanderbilt University here in the U.S., Nashville, Tennessee, and Roland T. Rust and Anthony J. Zahoric. These guys studied consumer behavior, and they found that 25 to 40%, depending on what industry you're in, of customers that are satisfied don't come back even if they're satisfied. Now, that always intrigued me because everybody says we want to satisfy our customers. And I think what they mean is we want to not satisfy them, but what they really mean is we want to create an experience that gets them to come back. Okay, that's ultimately, we're using the wrong word if we talk about satisfactory. So on a scale of 1 to 5, this is where, here's the question. If you were to rate a customer experience on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is bad, 2 is fair, 3 is average, 3 is average or satisfactory. That's where I put satisfactory in there. 4 is good, 5 is excellent. How likely is it that you would return to this company or brand if you rated them a 3, which is average, in the middle, just okay, satisfactory, fine, if you will? And finally I got an answer that seemed reasonable. And by the way, I asked the question different ways to different audiences on the study, which was great. We had so many questions this year that we fielded multiple studies, and we would ask some of the questions a different way to see if the answers would align, if that makes sense. So we want to make sure we get accuracy. 23%, that's almost 4 out of 5, 1 in 4 customers who have a satisfactory or average experience are not likely or will never return. Boom. Wow. Now, one of the reasons you'll get 77% of your customers to come back after a satisfied experience, that's basically what it is, about 3 out of 4 will come back, is that they don't have an alternative or it's not as convenient. They'll settle because they don't have to drive an extra 15 minutes to get to the competitor. And then when you factor in price. But I think it's worth noting that we asked a follow-up question. If you've been somewhat satisfied with a company, yet not bought from them again, okay, which is another way of saying it. So have you been somewhat satisfied, but not bought from them again? The answer was 70% said, I don't go back. And I think that's very telling. We are now in, to coin a phrase from Joe Pine and Jim Gilmore, we're in the experience economy, where the experience trumps so much. I think the product needs to do what it's supposed to do. It needs to be somewhat competitively priced, because we found that just about half your customers say, give me a great service experience, I'm not going to care as much about the price. As long as you're somewhat competitive. It doesn't make price completely irrelevant. It just makes it less relevant. And when you start to look at all of that, you realize the experience is extremely important. By the way, in our world with contact centers and CX leaders, they need to recognize, let's go back to what Jeff Bezos said about Amazon. We shouldn't need a customer support department. We should be that good. The reality is somebody's going to have a problem. It may not even be our fault. We ship a product out and maybe one of the major carriers doesn't deliver it. Well, that's not our fault, but it is our problem that we need to fix. So you realize that even though the best service is no service because you're going to be that good, there are going to be issues that customers have. So we need to be available. And when we are, the experience we want them to have when they buy from us we need to create the same experience as when they need service from us. And if you want to call it service, they have a problem, an issue, a complaint, a question even. We don't want to frustrate them.
Love that. You have highlighted that satisfactory isn't sufficient for customer retention. How should businesses redefine their metrics for customer satisfaction to better predict loyalty and repeat business?
So I wrote a book called I'll Be Back, How to Get Customers to Come Back Again and Again. By the way, I'll Be Back has nothing to do with the Terminator and Arnold Schwarzenegger. However, I did realize about 3 sentences into my outline that he made that line famous, which is why it was in my head. But how does that apply to business? And the reason I wrote that book is I'm fixated on numbers. I love numbers. I geek out over numbers. I like NPS is a great survey tool, general CSAT questions, anything that if I can get a number that gives me a pretty good snapshot of what's going on, that's great. And I was working with a company who said, we believe that's extremely important, but we also take a look at something else, and that is the cadence of the customer. So give you an example. And one of my clients is a hair salon company. I was speaking to this audience of over 1,000 managers of hair salons. And imagine they hired the bald guy to speak to managers of hair salons. And one of the things that they look at is they want to know if you're happy with your haircut. They want to know if you're happy with your stylist. They want to know if the experience was great. But here's what else they want to know. When did you plan to come back? Because let's say you're like the average person. We'll just use a general. Let's say this customer comes back once a month for a haircut. They're going to measure this customer's cadence. And by the way, with computers and AI and the ability to look at data, this is real easy to do. Measure the cadence of that customer. They come back once a month, and after 4 months, they don't come back the 5th month. What happened? Then the 6th month, they didn't come back the 6th month. You know what? We need to find out what's going on, or we need to give them incentive to come back. So it's so important to measure the behavior of the customer, not just the sentiment of their experience.
Yeah, no, I love that focus on the behavior of the customer, because you can see some really kind of interesting trends. Even in our own kind of business week, we were looking at trends in terms of customer behavior. And it's very telling if a customer begins to disengage with you from a service point of view, it can lead to churn, right?
That's a number you need to pay very close attention to.
But it's kind of counterintuitive in some ways, because in many businesses, to go back to Jeff Bezos' point, like no service is the best service. So sometimes you're actually trying to ensure that your customer is getting to use your product and service really easily. They don't have a need to contact you. Yet, if they're not finding a need to contact you, that can be a kind of a telltale sign, a metric, that loyalty is at risk.
Well, that's only because you don't know if they're happy or not. The fact that if they don't have to contact you ever, why would a customer take a chance? You're going to lose some people, no doubt about it. But why would a customer take a chance on doing business with a company that is competing against a company you never have a problem with?
But to your point, you don't know that as a customer experience leader. Are they not contacting
you? Well, you don't know that related to the contact center or the support that you provide. You should know it based on data you get from feedback and surveys that you send.
Absolutely. But again, even that is a kind of a form of contact, like the customer is engaging with you if they're going to give you that survey. But the challenge is if they don't engage with you at all, it's the unknown. And that's kind of the challenge sometimes in support. You have this ethos of I want to make life easier for customers. They shouldn't have to support me. But then if they're not contacting you, are they happy? Are they not happy? It's an age-old problem in customer service and customer support.
Well, I mean, if you're a manufacturer that sells it through retail, and you are really dependent upon your customer is buying from a retailer, not from you, there's a gap there. So how do you do this? Well, you engage with the retailer to talk about the products that they're selling and ultimately you'll find ways to get information about that customer. But most customers, if they're direct to consumer or you're in the B2B world, you're selling directly to them. And if you're the actual retailer there's no reason why you can't get the feedback that you want. You just have to find a different way to get it if you're not dealing directly. When you deal with a distribution system, oftentimes the distributor, by the way, your sales will give you an indication. You can have focus groups with typical customers, regardless of whether you're direct selling to them or not. I mean, this is what companies do. I think to not do something like that, to not find out what your customers think about you and assume is a mistake. You could be seeing growth going up and up and up and up. But what if the growth is, you're gaining 20%, but you're really gaining 40%. You're just losing 20% of your existing customers. You need to look at all the numbers and not just the top line.
Absolutely. And the good news is when you get that data, now with AI, you can analyze it in a much more fruitful manner for your business. You can really get the insights that help you make the right decisions for your customers or your business.
And if you use ChatGPT, by the way, you can get all kinds of incredibly, clever graphs and visuals, which once again, I'm geeking out over it.
Absolutely. It certainly enables you to look at data in so many different ways. You touched on in the report, like 81% of customers preferred personalized experiences. What are some of the innovative ways that you've seen that companies are successfully implementing personalization at scale?
Yeah. So that word at scale means you're not personalizing individually, which I call micro-personalization or micro data that you get on a customer. And that would be, for example, the customer that walks into a hotel and as soon as they pull up the reservation, the person behind the front desk says, "Welcome back. I see you were here 3 months ago. By the way, you gave us a really nice review. Would you like that same room?" That's micro, okay? That's not at scale. But by the way, your system allows you to do that at scale for every customer given the opportunity to do so. Let's talk about something much broader than that. You may remember there was something called, it's personalization, personas, and typical companies had several different personas of customers. This is just simply a way of describing a type of customer that fits into let's call it a bucket. And maybe a company has 4 or 5 different types of customers or personas. And you can look at these buckets of customers and you can treat them a certain way, market to them a certain way, respond to them, reach out to them, interact with them, however, and they're going to be a little bit different. And that's why you personalize to the buckets. Now, what's cool about this is that you're sending information to people or treating them a certain way based on what they've been buying from you. I'm going to go really generic on you. Nike is one of my favorite companies to talk about. They got a great loyalty program, and they know when you join the loyalty program, they take a look at the kind of shoes that you buy. Do you buy shoes to run in? Do you buy shoes to play golf in? There's all kinds of different shoes. And if you're buying golf shoes, they're going to send you information on golf shoes. They're going to talk to you and provide good content around golf. They're not going to send you information about, tennis shoes for the tennis court or, running shoes. They know what you want. And so as a result, you feel they know me, they personalize the experience. And when I contact them, they kind of have a good idea of who I am and what I've been buying. So therefore they can, and by the way, this is the beautiful thing about AI today. AI supporting the contact center representative allows information to come through that contact center employee's brain and come out their mouth in an empathetic, sympathetic, customized way to that customer. So they get to focus on the EQ, not just answering questions, and that emotional experience the customer gets feels like these people know me, they talk to me the way I like to be talked to, they understand everything, and that's what the difference is between today and yesterday's way of doing business. By the way, there's still personas out there. It's just we're really able to, break it down even to more categories than we have in the past.
I love that the concept of the micro personalization and the persona personalization, and almost mixing the two. As we look to the future of customer experience, what emerging trends do you believe businesses should be preparing for right now to stay ahead of the curve?
Well, let's just go back to what we started with at the very beginning of our conversation. Customers are smarter than ever before, so recognize that, and here's where it gets a little scary. Do we want to invest in this new technology? Because is it expensive? Do we want to take a chance? Well, you don't need to be the earliest adopter, but you need to take a look at what's going on, not just in your industry, but outside of your industry. Because somebody outside your industry may be adopting a new technology, new technique, new way of doing business that will 100% work for you. Just none of your competitors have figured that out yet. Okay, so I can't tell you exactly what's coming down the pike for all industries that are out there, but I want them to consider this. And in that book, I'll Be Back, we have these questions that we ask, like, why would someone do business for me? I call it the 6 steps to creating the I'll Be Back customer. And we want to know, why do they do business with us? Why did they do business with the competitor? What is the competitor doing that we could be doing? And now this next question is really important. Number 4 is, what is it outside of our industry, or not what is it, who, the companies? What companies outside of our industry do we love doing business with, and why? Okay. And everything counts. And then the follow-up question to that, which is number 5, is if there's what they're doing, is there anything they're doing that could work for us? Because now we're looking at the world. We're not looking at just our industry and just the category that we're in. We're looking at everything else. And it's amazing what we can come up with that, we might be in the retail, music business. You can see my guitars in the background, but I'm talking and I'm doing business with an automotive network. And I go, man, that is a great idea. We should incorporate that into the music store. Anyway, I kind of digress on that, but that's what I want people to be looking at, is what companies outside of the industry are doing things that you love. The follow-up question of that is, and what of those things can we use for us? And if you want to know the 6th question, buy the book. No, I won't. I'm just kidding. The 6th question is if you implement what you studied between your competition and other companies outside of your industry, if you started to implement this, you go back to the very first question. Now, why would customers want to buy from us?
I love that example, and also, AI, absolutely an emerging trend. But the one thing that I kind of say to businesses, it's not AI for AI's sake. Like, think about the business problem you're choosing to deploy that technology for. like really focus on that. And, and also to your point, like also, aligned with that, think about the art of the possible with AI. Like look to see how other people are using it in a creative way. And that then kind of generates ideas for you and your business.
And it's come down in price. I mean, even the smallest companies can afford what big companies could spend millions of dollars on 10 years ago. Today, it's hundreds of dollars. It's amazing. You still need to have some savvy, but if you want a basic AI type of solution, you can get great AI solutions for very, very low money. Even the smallest of businesses can handle that.
Absolutely. It's available to everyone at this stage, which is the great thing and one of the key benefits of generative AI. Shep, we really want to thank you for joining us today. Like you, as always, have provided some really good insights into the industry and the trends and what's happening. It's always great to chat with you. So really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you so much. Great to be back and can't wait for the next time.